There are so many questions, I think, for so many families about banking, because
Mm-hmm.
how do you help your parents as far as being on the account, paying their bills if you need
Mm-hmm.
to? If you're not
Mm-hmm.
on the account, what
Mm-hmm.
are the
Mm-hmm.
options you have?
We wanted to make sure we clear up all those questions. So we are bringing in Sal Ramirez from Amegy Bank. Thanks so much for being with us, Sal.
Hi, everybody.
Well, let's just start because I think one of the first places where people get stuck is understanding the difference between if I am an authorized signer, if you will, on my account versus being a co-owner of an account with my parents. What are the differences?
Good question. So there's different ways that you can help your parents with an account. So if you're a joint owner in Texas, that means something different from other states. So it's important to know that. But in Texas, that means you have transaction authority.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's other ways to help your parents um, as a, like, per se, power of attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That you could have a power of attorney. Now, you want to get some guidance from somebody who maybe does legal help and they can guide you to that. The bank
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be able to guide you,
Mm-hmm.
but you present that to the bank, and that would help your parents. And so, what that means is, should something happen, um, you could come in and do certain transactions to help your parents get their bills paid, for instance.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on where you live around the country, if you're not sure, is the easiest thing to do to just go to your banker and say, what do I do here?
Here's what our
Yes.
objective is. Here's what we're trying to do. What
Yeah.
would be the best way to do that?
Yes, go to your parents' bank or call them. They could give you guidance. Sometimes you walk in and you think you're going to accomplish something right then and there. The best thing is to prepare, so you can give that bank a call. A
Mm-hmm.
good instance is where I work here. We've got different affiliates in different states, and so there may be different laws or different procedures that are in place. And so, best thing to do is to call it so that you can prepare and make the best plan or course of action.
Yeah, because I think that's interesting. I would have just assumed that it would be more bank by bank ways that things are done, not state by state. So even your bank in Texas is going to operate different than in as far as what are allowed or what things are called, perhaps.
Yeah, very much so.
Same.
And they're similar. They're not.
Yeah.
There are not many differences, but it's important to know
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, you want to feel empowered that you're helping your parents,
Hmm.
and you
Sure.
want them to feel that empowerment as well and to understand what's going on, because they have to be a part of that process the entire way. And I'm sure it give them peace of mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
If something happens to my mom or dad and I haven't already put myself on their account as a co-signer or whatever, and I have a power of attorney, is the first thing I need to do is come to the bank and say, hey, I've got this power of attorney. I need to start writing checks for my parents.
So yes, be proactive. If you have that power of attorney, it's in place. So there's different types of power of attorneys. There's
Right.
medical ones as well. But yeah, be proactive. Find out where your parent banks
Hmm.
and present that to the bank. They'll provide you the guidelines and next steps and what you want to do. That usually means getting your name put on the account, and they'll review it. There's usually a department at the financial institution
Mhm.
that'll help with reviewing to see what kind of transactions can be done, because sometimes those power of attorneys limit the types of banking transactions you can do. It doesn't mean it's a blanket all the time.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. Because I know we had a question in our group for another bank, but they were just asking, and they said they went in and said, "I have a power of attorney," and the first person they talked to at the bank said, "Well, you can't do anything with this," and so they
Mhm.
left very frustrated, not knowing that maybe they should have just asked for a manager. Or so, how do you know when? I don't think I'm getting the right answer, and it doesn't make sense based on what I've read in in the power of attorney. It sure seems like I should have these authorities. When do you don't want to be rude and question the person that's giving you the information, but how do you know when it is time to sort of press and ask for
And
the
go up
supervisor,
the
go up the
ladder.
chain, if you
Yeah.
will? Yeah.
That's a good question. So before being in banking, I'll preface that I wouldn't know what to do. I've seen power of attorneys, and the lingo or the verbiage, it, it it's not self-explanatory, but you can tell if it'll have the language that says, "Hey, you can do financial transactions with this power of attorney," or maybe that it's more focused on medical things. That'd be the first thing, is to review that POA or power of attorney.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing, if you have somebody who you feel inclined, and you have that gut, go with your gut, is what I always say. If in your gut you feel like, oh my gosh, I didn't get the right answer, somebody's misleading me, ask for somebody, ask for a manager.
Okay.
If that doesn't work, again, call the bank. It's going to be so easy. They'll give you guidelines, and especially over the phone, they have departments that help with that. So they'll let you know what to ask for when you walk into a branch. And so even if it is a banker and you need to maybe speak to a financial advisor or the branch manager, you'll be able to mention that phrasing or those things that they have you talk about, the talking points, to help you get you taken care of.
Because one of the main reasons we're doing this interview is because we just want people to understand the right terminology to use or the right words to use when you're asking that question, because then you can hopefully get the answer that you need. So that's a great point.
Yeah.
Right. Normally you mention, I'm sorry to interrupt, but normally you mention power of attorney, and that a banker or bank manager should know what next steps to take and kind of what to ask you, so that they can get you taken care of.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, do you have people who come in to be the co-signer or co-owner, however you want to describe it, on the account, but they're a little nervous about, I don't know if I should do this because am I going to be liable for any debts that my parents have now? Because I think a lot of people get in that situation. And what do you tell them?
That's a great question. So this is usually we leave it up to the family, because mom or dad, you're right, might have many different accounts with different types of funds. Sometimes you have an account that has a smaller amount of funds. So we leave it up to the family to decide that, because you're right. There is a difference between being a joint owner on account and being a power of attorney, right? So I think what you were implying there is that there are maybe certain tax ramifications or something. So that'd also be a great time to get, if you have a family accountant or somebody who helps with taxes, they could probably clear that up to help you understand if I become a joint owner, because maybe that's easier and less costly. What might happen if I become the joint owner? Am I going to have tax responsibility? Because it sounds like maybe somebody prompted that.
Right.
And or is there liability if the parent were to get into debt or something like that? Would you be potentially, as the adult child and a co-owner of that account, would you potentially become liable for their debts?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer for that. I do know that if it, let's say it was not a parent and just a husband and wife, since you're joint owners, you do take on that liability. So I imagine it might be a similar instance, but that's a good question. I don't know that. I would ask your bank.
Yeah, so something to ask, I guess, if you're worried about that.
That's
right?
the biggest thing. Always just ask those questions. And one other question is, a lot of people, not to be mean about it, but are like, oh my gosh, my kids are gonna take all my money because they're on the account. But just because you're on a checking account doesn't mean that you can get into the savings account and do something. So would it be easy for Kim and I to set up a checking account that our kids could be on just in case, but they're not on the savings account, so they can only get in the checking account and then pay bills?
100%, exactly what you mentioned. So yes, if you feel safe, I've run into this. I've done this over 10 years, and it's always scary when it gets to where your parent is aging and something's up. Something's up. But the best plan of action is exactly what you said, Mike. Is setting up an account where maybe a family member or your children are there, and that they can help. That you have maybe funds there. So should something happen, worst case scenario, let's say you're traveling and something happens and you don't have access to funds. That's a good reason to have your kids on there, because they can take care of you or take care of bills while you get back.
Yeah. And I think it's important also to make sure that people know that when you become a signer on an account, or the co-owner, as we're calling it, that what authority then do I have, or what can I do? And frankly, my parents are still on the account. It's still their account, right? So they what are they still allowed to do as well? I mean, everything that they were able to do before, right? If they wanted to come in and clear out the account,
you're not taking their power away.
Right. It's just that both. Do you have similar availability to the funds as both the owner, as the adult child co-owner, and the parent, of course, who own the account to start with?
So in Texas, yes. So joint ownership. Let's say y'all were my parents. All three of us would have the same transaction authority. I could swipe my debit card. I could walk into a bank or branch and to make a deposit. Whereas a power of attorney, that changes things. That gives you the ability to do and transact on behalf of your parents. So
Okay,
A lot
gotcha.
of the times, a good example is maybe your parent has to go in surgery and they're recovering for
Yeah.
6 months, so they can't get to the bank, they can't
Mhm.
pay their bills.
Mhm.
That's usually where maybe a child will come in as a power of attorney and take care of bills from mom or dad
Right.
while they are getting better.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Since we're in modern
So,
times, we need to ask about online banking.
absolutely. Yes. So what is your recommendation as far as for if we're co-owners of the account for us to be able to, get in and monitor the account as well? Do we have separate logins than our parent?
Yes, you do. So good. That's a very great question. So depending on the financial institution and whether you're a power of attorney or you're a joint owner, you want to have your own username and login.
Okay.
Further than just the power of attorney or being a joint owner, it helps with deciphering should there be something fraudulent or somebody's defrauding your debit card or somebody gets access to your username and you're using one. It'll be hard or difficult for the financial institution to try to help you.
Mhm.
So yes, 100% encourage you to have your own username and login. It makes
So,
things so much easier.
well, and I was just going to share just from personal experience of the things that we've gone through. Knowing your parents' bank and the people that work there can be amazing. And I mean, I shared with you earlier that the bank was actually the branch manager at my mom's bank was the one who actually caught some potential fraud before it happened of her getting scammed. And because she was sharing why she was coming to withdraw money, and it was not a normal action that she normally took, he, kind of questioned and said, "Now, what is that for again? I don't think
Yep.
that's legitimate." So I am forever indebted to him, frankly, because he was the one who was able to sort of, was listening for triggers or this doesn't sound exactly right. Let's talk about this. And obviously, it's still her account. If she just pressed and said, "No, I want the money," they would have given it to her. But I think that just showed me the importance and the value of actually getting to know the people who work at your parents' bank.
That's right. I mean, that at the foundation, and kudos to your banker. He sounds like you have an awesome banker. Um, know your banker,
Mhm.
know your community bank. We pride ourselves on knowing our customers for that reason alone.
Mhm.
Going back to uh, having usernames, logins, that's what we do. We're going to look at if mom and you have a debit card, we're looking to see which card was swiped because maybe we see something that your parents have a small little transaction that comes through and it's peculiar because they don't shop at Amazon and they don't have a
Right.
computer. That'd be
Right.
odd. So yeah, kudos to your banker.
Mhm.
Definitely establish a relationship. It's never too late either. Like don't
Yeah.
feel embarrassed walking in and saying, "Hey, here's my mom. It's time for me to help. How can I help?"
Hmm.
We're actually really excited to see that when children come in with their elderly parents because it shows that familiar connection and
Mhm.
that y'all have made a plan you put a plan in place to help.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. When mom all of a sudden ended up with a PayPal account, which
See?
she didn't know
what
what
PayPal
PayPal was,
was.
Oh
and the
no.
bank was able to step in and they went to bat for her and were able to get the money back. That's a long story, but
Yeah.
but yes, I never would have frankly realized how important that relationship with your bank can really be. But it can save a lot of heartache. It did for us for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sal. I think we all understand now. We need to know where our parents bank. We
Mhm.
need to
Right.
we need to probably be on an account with our parents, and we
Mhm.
need to know
Mhm.
who their
Well,
banker is.
well, and one last question is, are there things that are different while someone is alive versus once somebody passes? Are there boxes that need to be checked or things like that when you're becoming a co-owner of an account that can benefit that later?
Um, so yes. So if you're a joint owner, that should unfortunately that happen and a parent passes away on the account, you being the joint owner, you'd have access to those funds and be able to take care of them. Even though
Okay.
the intention and the primary owner of the account was your parent,
Mhm.
Right.
you'd be able to move forward and take care of
Okay.
their estate
Uh-huh.
after the fact.
Okay.
Or as a power of attorney, once your parent passes away, the power of
Our
attorney
attorney goes
no
away.
longer has
Right.
That's right.
any
Right.
validity, and so it moves into probably an estate
Mhm.
or probate, depending on your state.
And
Right.
it are in some, and this may be institution by institution, but or bank by bank, but are there sometimes a transfer on death box that gets checked if maybe you don't want to have maybe for instance, I don't want my kids to be a signer on the account, but I do want them to have access to these funds. if something were to happen to me?
Great question. So you want to ask your bank if they have the option for beneficiary, to designate a beneficiary,
Okay.
to designate right of survivorship.
Okay.
So that might help as well, because
Okay.
sometimes, or most times, accounts might be designated without survivorship. So that what that parent's saying is, once something happens to me, you're going to need some sort of document that says what happens to these funds. That
Right.
might be a will or a state document.
Okay, so then you
So yes, very good question.
maybe go into probate or things like that.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
so more terms.
Yeah,
Important.
more terms to know about.
Yeah, more
Yes.
terms.
It'd be scary, yes.
Yeah.
Great information. Yeah, you've cleared up a lot and made us know that we need to make sure we talk to the bankers involved. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
I think that we really understand now that we need to be more involved, not just with knowing where the money is, but make sure we have access to be able to help out, but know the banker, because bankers like Sal can help so much.
I have seen it personally.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Hey, if you have any other topics you'd like us to discuss, let us know. Parenting aging parents.